Russian President Vladimir Putin has clashed with Western leaders over Syria at a G8 summit being held in Northern Ireland. And despite protracted negotiations, there doesn't really appear to be much sign of progress. Stacy Meichtry is joining us from Enniskillen in Northern Ireland. Stacy, Putin is still backing the Syrian leadership, but the West, and the rest of G8, I should say, are backing the rebels. Is that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the state of affairs. There had been a real push by Western leaders to try to get Putin to soften his support for the Assad regime. It looks like they haven't been successful on that front. So instead, they're looking at, possibly putting out a final communique that'll simply acknowledge that the effort to hold peace talks will continue.
I mean, it is interesting because Putin, the U.S. is on verge of supplying arms to the rebels with some backing from other G8 members, whereas Putin has been helping President Bashar al-Assad for some time.
Yes, Syria has long been a client state of the Kremlin. And the basic feeling among the Russians is that, outside forces, Western forces, have no business really interfering in Syria's internal affairs. So the Russians have vowed to actually send anti-aircraft missiles to Syria to fulfill the contract that was already in place, and also to basically preempt, a possible no-fly zone that could be set up by Western forces. So,
Stacey, there's been a lot of condemnation by Western leaders of the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian leadership. How is Russia responding to this?
Yeah, going into the G8, that was really one of the goals of Western leaders, the French in particular. They wanted to try to, pressure Putin into backing a condemnation of chemical weapons use. It doesn't look like they've managed to do that. Instead, Putin has sort of dismissed the evidence that any chemical weapons have used, and he's also said that there's basically no proof that the Assad regime are the ones responsible for it.
If anything, Putin seems to be suggesting that by supplying weapons to the rebels, the West is actually taking the risk that these weapons could end up in the hands of the Islamists.
Yeah, the Kremlin's making 2 points. One is that if the West supplies arms to the rebels, they risk fomenting the conflict, and then the other one is that if you supply these high-powered weapons, they could end up in the hands of Group Nusra and other sort of extremist elements that are tied to Al-Qaeda.
Given this divide at the moment, obviously, between Russia and the rest of G8, is there really any chance for peace talks that apparently are going to be held in Geneva next month?
Well, that's the big question. We've been talking about these peace talks for months now, and they seem to be getting further and further away. At first they were talking about the end of June, now we're talking about the end of July. Meanwhile, the conflict drags on, and every time the Assad regime, brings down another rebel stronghold, there's really less incentive for people to come to the negotiating table.
Brilliant, Stacey. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.